You're listening to the Jersey Guys Podcast, the show that talks about hard rock, heavy metal, AOR, and West Coast music. In-depth conversation and special guests are always on tap, so settle in and turn it up. Now, here are your hosts, Tom and Mark.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jersey Guys Podcast. This is Mark Ballo. I'm here with my co-host Tom Coyne, as always. We had a little bit of an extended layoff here, but we're back with a brand new episode. And what we thought we would do tonight, and this is something that Tom brought up a little while ago, have more of a free-form discussion on something related to music. We've done album discographies by bands. We've had special guests, of course, come in here. But Tom said, maybe let's do something where we have a little more of a free-form discussion on maybe a particular artist, singer, guitar player, something like that. Of course, if you're following along on our YouTube page and you're watching this, you're seeing the banner and But we're talking about tonight, we figured we'd start with a discussion on the British singer, Tony Mills. Tony, of course, was in the band Shy, famous for that. Went on to record some albums with TNT. But in between that, he had a bunch of solo albums. He's been a guest on a number of albums. He's had a couple other band projects that he's done along the way over the years. So we thought we would talk about that. So, Tom, what was your kind of idea when you thought of this to kind of do this sort of topic and this discussion?
Well, I wanted to get somebody that was known but unknown, if you know what I mean. And this guy, I think, has pretty much always been a cult figure in the hard rock AOR community. Never really took off in the States, where in Europe, Japan, and other parts of the world, he's pretty much a household name for people into hard rock. So I obviously didn't want to do something, where we talk about Steve Perry or, that is young for an hour. So I wanted to go a little bit more, not totally obscure, because then you lose a lot of people. I wanted to get somebody that people know, at best are very familiar with, or at least have heard the name, and hopefully familiarize people and maybe open up his music to a lot of other people. And for people that are familiar with him, hopefully they'll enjoy what we have to talk about. And so I kind of, there were a few artists I was thinking about, but I know we both had a mutual love and respect for Tony Mills, so I figured this would be a perfect guy to start off.
Now, I mean, basically, and I said that when we started, I guess the most popular band that he did was, and the band he started with was Shy, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, talk about like the band Shy. I mean, when did you get turned on to them?
Probably mid-'80s. I actually did not come on board with the first album. I think it was one of those things where I came on to the second album and found out that back then, the first album was on the Ebony Records, which anybody familiar with Ebony Records had a lot of excellent artists back in the early 80s. Blade Runner, Grim Reaper, just to name two, but were notorious for bad production and even worse distribution. So honestly, I didn't know this album from the get-go. I would probably say, from recollection, it was the second album that I got familiarized with them.
Yeah. Now the debut was on Ebony was 1983, right? That came out.
Yeah, 82 or 83, I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's like you said. I mean, there's actually some really good songs on that
Oh,
album.
yeah, it's
but
terrific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, the production is just...
The production is bad, but that kind of was like almost what Ebony became known for.
Yeah.
And you just expected it. And after the years, it became redeeming. There was just something about it that just was, it didn't even bother me. Like the Grim Reaper albums were the same way. They were so strong. And that tinny production that went along with it just was, I don't know, like after all these years, there's just something endearing about it.
Yeah. Well, like you said, and then the follow-up, the next two albums was kind of where the band made their name, right? 85 with Brave the Storm, and then 87 with Excess All Areas. So those two albums are probably where, I guess, the band made their name. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was also a change in style. I think the first record was a little bit more. It was melodic hard rock, but it had the obvious new wave of British heavy metal influences also, which was interesting.
Yeah, because of that time period.
Because of the time period, and also that label, because everything that was on that label was pure new wave of British heavy metal sounding.
Yeah.
So some songs had that sound. Some songs you could see the beginnings of Shy, of what they were to be with the Paddy McKenna signature keyboard sound, and first album's great. For what it was great, and then they started to develop the signature sound on the second album, Brave the Storm, which is a very good record.
Oh yeah, no, I Brave the Storm and Excess All Areas. I love those albums, and again, they were albums I kind of wasn't introduced or wasn't aware of them at that time because
Right.
I was not an import guy, not getting this stuff in America. I actually didn't become aware of Tony Mills and Shy until the fourth album, which was Misspent Youth, because they actually released that in America at that point. If everybody recalls,
That was
in
the first
America,
American
it
release.
went by the name of Shy England.
Shy
right?
England.
If you
I
remember
actually have a
that.
Shy England T-shirt. Yeah.
Do you? Yeah. So it's like that. That actually was where I was turned on to the band. I remember, was it "Give It All You Got"?
Yep.
Was the single and the video at that time, and I actually was lucky enough to see the band in 1990 open up for Enough's Enough here in America, a small little club in New Jersey.
That's
called
great. I
Studio
never got
One.
to see. I never saw them live.
Yeah.
I mean, they played over here so briefly.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the British bands of that era. The second album, I was a big fan of. The third album, to me, to this day is a mega classic. One of the signature melodic hard rock albums out of England.
Oh yeah.
For that time period.
Excess All Areas is just it's a classic. What do you call it? Melodic hard rock or whatever?
Yeah, melodic hard rock. They were a little too edgy to be called just straight out AOR. Although
Right.
there were songs that were AOR. He certainly had an AOR voice.
Yeah.
This album was almost like I would go so far to say was a groundbreaking album for the time.
Yeah.
There were a couple of them, and just off the top of my head, the Air Race, the first Virginia Wolf, Tobruk. There were a bunch of them, but this one was really, with the production. It had the Neil Kernan production, which was always a big favorite producer of mine. He was always able to get that big bottom end and also the big bright highs. This is a terrific album. I could go on for hours about anybody that doesn't have it, that's remotely interested in. I would say almost to start off with this album.
Yeah, Excess All Areas, 1987. So yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
So like I said, then they went on. Their fourth album was actually Misspent Youth,
Right.
which I said came out in America. They toured in America for a little bit. And then I guess that was kind of like the end of the band, right? With Tony Mills at that point.
Yeah.
Because the next album came out in like 1994, Welcome to the Madhouse, and that had a different singer.
Yeah. The Misspent Youth album, I liked it, but I thought it was definitely a come down from.
Oh yeah, it was geared probably towards the American.
It was geared
audience,
toward at least that's
trying
what
to
it
make
seemed like, right?
Yeah.
It seemed to be
Cock rocky.
Yes, which was never. I mean, that's never been Tony Mills's forte.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
It seemed to be a little cliched.
Yep.
You know, you could see that their image on the back was a little bit more rough and tumble, almost a little like that Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora look.
Yeah.
That was selling big at the time. It's okay. There's a couple of good songs on it. It's not something I go back to regularly. I don't really think it's them. I think they were a little out of character on this album, which probably led to them. I'm assuming maybe having problems with the label and changing singers too.
Yeah,
and that's when John Ward became the singer.
Yeah.
Which I like that album even less.
Oh yeah, no, that was a total departure. I mean, you talk about the band changing sounds. I mean, that was more like almost like a sleazy sort of.
Yeah, kind of like a wannabe Tiger Tails, I guess, but nowhere near as good as Tiger Tails.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming because Ward was more in that.
But he came from that. I mean, he sang in some bands that had that sort of background.
He sang it in an American. Right off the top of my head, one of the demos that we've converted over the years, he sang in an American band also that never got signed. Steve Harris wrote basically every song. Ward brought very little to the table in terms of songwriting.
Now, as more of a fan, like I said, I wasn't really in tune with the two previous albums that before Misspent Youth, and I guess you obviously were. Talk about the songwriting. Was Tony Mills and Steve Harris, who was a guitar player in Shy, were they the main writers?
Yeah, but
or more so
McKenna wrote.
Oh, okay.
Patty McKenna. Mm-hmm. Later on, Roy Davis, the bass player, wrote. McKenna wrote a fair amount of their earlier stuff, and Roy Davis was there like from right when they had changed singers again.
Yeah.
When they had Lee Small, but Steve Harris, much like the Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, has always been the main guy in this band.
Yeah.
Everything went through him. There's no question about it. It was his band.
So Misspent Youth came out 1989. Tony Mills at that point leaves. They do another album a few years later with a different singer.
Welcome to the Madhouse. Yeah.
Welcome to the Madhouse. Yeah. But then Mills went on to do Siam.
Yes.
mid 90s, right? At that point. And the Siam albums are interesting for a Tony Mills fan. I guess it's kind of different than anything else he's ever done, right? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, well, it's very for anybody that's not familiar with them, they're very Queensryche, with a lot of those bands that we liked from the USA, like Hitman and Lethal. Mm-hmm. had a lot of those influences, and he had perfect vocals for that. So it was a great avenue for him to go down. They were cult classics, these albums at the time, and also the music scene had changed, so it was kind of welcome.
Yeah, well, that's 94, 95, and it's
I mean,
especially in America.
When these albums, I remember when they came out, seeing them advertised at Burn magazine, and they had gotten really big write-ups. Not that I was able to read them, but you could see
the score.
Yeah, they give them 91s and stuff, so you knew they had to be good.
Yeah.
So it was a real welcomed addition to his back catalog, that he went in a direction of really those great kind of progressive metal bands of the mid to late 80s from the U.S.
Yeah. What was of the two Siam albums? We had Language of Menace was 1994, the debut, and then you had Prayer, 1995, the following year. Do you have a favorite?
I think probably the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually was listening to him and revisiting him a little bit as we were preparing for this, and I actually think the second one, Prayer, actually.
I'd have to go back and listen. These were albums that I killed when they came out. I mean, I probably listened to them 20, 25 times, but have not really gone back to them in a while. I remember them.
Yeah.
But I'd probably have to revisit them to see which one I like better. They're very similar in style to each other.
Yes, yeah.
He definitely had an agenda of what he wanted to do. And I give him a lot of credit, because he not only didn't change his style, but he kind of went somewhere that he hadn't been before.
Right,
in terms of that technical, melodic USA metal.
Yeah.
What they kind of sounded like.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, his voice fit perfectly, because it really did. When you realize listening to this style of music, you're saying, wow, he really does have that Jeff Tate sort of thing going on. So it was interesting. When you're coming from something with Shy, where he had the helium vocals, and it was whereas this is a little more, it's definitely more edgy and totally different style.
There was another USA band called Pavlov's Dog. A lot of this album, they came out around the same times, but again, it was very similar in style, and it was almost like an American USA metal album.
At that point, I guess this is mid 90s, and then he kicks around for a few years, and it was sort of with the end of the 90s that he kind of got back into Shy at that point.
Yes, that's when there was a kind of a barrage of Shy material.
Yeah, well, there was two albums, right? They came out kind of back to back.
Generation.
Yeah.
And Let the Hammer Fall.
And they were basically demo albums or leftover songs?
They were supposedly all songs that would never used before. I mean, and they weren't.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I mean, when I say supposedly, it's not that I'm doubting that. It's just it was just such a deluge of material that just seemed to appear. I don't know how much recording that they did, back in the day, but these two albums were overall very good. A lot of
tracks on each, right?
Yeah, and a lot of good songs.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that was just okay. I mean, to me, it was very hard to digest at the time.
This was stuff that was probably left over from the beginning up till the point he left.
Well, that's the thing. You got to kind of listen to it and figure out what eras some of this stuff was recorded. But it was a nice introduction back to Tony Mills being with the band, and there was, like I said, a lot of stuff that came out within, I want to say about a 99, basically within a year.
Within the same year probably, yeah. I remember those coming out, and yeah, and it was kind of like his introduction to the band, coming back into the band, like you said, and then he basically at that point, I mean, the band was back with him, but they did like he started doing some solo albums too. Not too long after that, right? I remember the Cruiser album, which was his debut solo album from 2002.
From the highest mountain till the sea divides, I'll keep the faith alive.
I love that album. I remember, and it's a funny story, and I'll go off a little bit on something here, but I remember at the time when that album came out, was working and just was really busy with our job, and so I was working weekends, and sometimes I'd go in on like Sundays. And I was, of course, in the office by myself, and I used to have a little CD player on my desk. And it was around that time that the Cruiser album came out. And I remember just putting that in and listening to that over and over and over many times, and really just loved that album. I
like it too.
That was a great album. Yeah. Great songs.
Great songs. It sounded like a good Shy record.
Yeah. I mean, it harkened back to that sort of the melodic hard rock, a little AOR in there. And stuff.
It was a great period. If you were a fan of him, this was a great period because there was just so much stuff coming out.
Yeah.
You know, they had put out all those albums that we were just talking about, and then this, which had a very Shy feel to it, this album.
Well, it's funny because that came out in 2002, as did the Unfinished Business Shy album.
Right.
The same year.
Right.
So you said there's like this deluge of material coming out with him on it. And, you know, you have two of these old demo type albums. And then like a year or two later, you have a solo album. You have a new Shy album. What did you think about the Unfinished Business?
I like that album a lot.
Yeah. There was two albums there that they put out in that period. And that was sort of like the new...
Yes.
The new revamping of Shy, I guess, or you know, and that was after they put these demo albums out. They come out with Unfinished Business, and then 2-3 years later, there was Sunset and Vine, right? So there's two albums right there that are like the comeback of Shy. And they were
strong. I mean, Sunset and Vine, in my opinion, is their best album. They've ever done anything better before
Really?
or after that. I thought it was the songwriting, his vocals. Yeah, for me, we're not ranking all these
Right.
albums tonight, but if I had to rank something above everything else, it would be that album.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I would definitely agree. I think both those albums, I think had really strong songs on them. They were
Yeah, Unfinished Business is very good, and
Yeah.
Sunset is
it
that is
was a new
close to
era of
perfect.
Shy basically at that point.
Yeah, it's great. The songwriting is just incredible on that album, and the guitar playing.
Yes. Yeah.
Was a very underrated guitar player.
Yeah, Steve Harris. It's funny, you talk about it. You mentioned it's like everybody, Steve Harris, Iron Maiden. No, this is Steve Harris from Shy.
Very, very underrated player. And I think maybe because they weren't like a quote unquote metal band that people didn't pay attention to the guitar playing. But if you listen to him,
Yeah.
tremendous player.
Yeah.
Very melodic, very technical, very tasty. Wrote some not only great songs, but good, terrific leads. Really a huge tremendous loss to the melodic rock community when he passed away.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're talking about Tony Mills, and anybody who's listening to this that even knows Tony Mills just a little bit, obviously. I mean, he passed away a few years ago, but prior to that, yeah, Steve Harris. It was 2011. The guitar player from Shy, he passed away himself. So yeah, I mean, you've got really, the voice and the guitar of the band now gone, unfortunately. But before Steve Harris passed away in 2011, and at that point, I mean, Tony Mills, he left after the Sunset and Vine album, 2005. 2006, he joined TNT,
Yes.
the Norwegian band, famous Ronnie Latecro, Tony Harnell. But he came on board. He ended up recording 3 albums with the band.
3 studio albums, yeah.
But getting back to just to close out the Shy period, in 2011, the band released another album without
Shy.
Yeah, just self-titled Shy without Tony Mills on it.
With Lee Smalls.
Lee Small was the singer, and that actually you turned me on to that not all that long ago.
Turned a lot of people on to this.
That album is, and I know we're talking about Tony Mills, but that album is unbelievably good. Lee Small, and you said it as soon as you said it.
Sounds like Glenn Hughes.
Glenn Hughes, just it sounds exactly like Glenn Hughes, and the songs on that album
And the production.
unbelievable.
The production is
everything on that album
ridiculous.
is just top quality.
It really is.
And
That
class.
is a great, great album. I don't want to say it's their best album because it's kind of silly to say that's their best without Tony Mills.
Yeah.
But it's close. It's right
is.
up there with Excess and Sunset.
Sunset Vine. Yeah, no,
It's
I mean,
right
it
up
is.
there.
It really is. And
it's that good.
Yeah.
The song again. I mean, the songwriting was great. The production was incredible.
yeah, and it's a little bit of a different animal for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it is, and I don't. There's so many people that don't know this album. I was just actually turned our mutual friend Vincent Lubrano onto this album.
Okay.
He wasn't aware of it, and he was shocked at how good it was.
Oh, I remember it coming out, and I kind of blew it off because I'm like, oh, it's not
Right, it
not
doesn't
Tony
have-
Mills.
right,
I'm like,
right, right.
how good could it be? And I just probably never gave it that chance. But yeah, when we talked about it just a couple months ago, and I kind of like went out and I started listening to it, and I was like, I couldn't stop listening to it. I'm like, this is a great album. So I mean, I know we're talking about Tony Mills, but we had to mention that because
The song "So Many Tears" on that album, it's one of the best.
Oh yeah,
songs
no, every
ever,
song
with the song
great.
with the moniker of Shy next to it.
Yeah.
"So Many Tears." It's just an epic song that you can't get enough. You don't want it to end.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's great stuff for sure.
And it's worth talking about only because we've been entrenched in Shy, and it's kind of it's too good to just ignore because Mills isn't on it.
Of course. Yeah. No, definitely. So then at that point, and I mentioned a minute ago, 2006, Tony Mills joins TNT. Tony Harnell left. He was kind of in and out of the band, right, for a period there in the 2000s, and finally he just walked away. He wanted to concentrate on some solo stuff. Stay in America, kind of do his thing.
Right. He was involved with that project with Mark Reale.
Yes. Yeah. Westworld, right?
Westworld.
Yeah.
Three studios and a
A live album. Yeah.
That's another. We could talk about Harnell and all his machinations, but that was another great band that did.
Yeah, that might be a good future episode.
Yeah, that didn't get its due.
Did you see it? I got to see them live. Did you see them ever?
No, I didn't.
I got to see them down in Jersey here, stone's throw away from where we're recording
Were they
right
playing
now
Stone
at Birch
Pony?
Hill. Birchill.
Birchill.
Yeah, they played there. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Got to see that.
No, I did not see them.
Okay. Yeah, they didn't do a lot. I mean, I know
No,
they
I know.
played a handful of shows.
I know. I got to ask Phil if he saw them, but I don't think he did either.
But going back to let's talk a little bit about the TNT period with Tony Mills, because I know it's kind of like something we were just talking about it before we started recording. There's 3 albums that he did with the band. The first 2 are kind of like
Yeah, weird writing, which Letecro, when left to his own devices, usually goes in that direction.
Exactly.
Anybody heard Vagabond?
Yep,
And some of
exactly.
his other, but although the Vagabond stuff I did like.
Yeah, with Jorn Lund.
Jorn, it was when Jorn was good.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with Mills being in that band. I don't like when a name singer who's very identifiable in a band leaves and another identifiable guy jumps in. I'd rather a no name.
Yeah.
I didn't like that pairing at all. I didn't really see that working. But I gave it a shot. And then when I got the first album, very disappointed. Not in Mills, but the songs, I didn't think it was good.
No, not at all.
The second album was particularly good.
Yeah.
Third album was better, I guess the best of the 3.
Never let your freedom go. Looking for life, a refugee, wanders alone, endlessly through the night, traveling far, follows a star to find who you are. It could be you, it could be me, it could be you, it could be me. This could happen to any of us. Don't you let your freedom go. Eyes wide like a child, some dreams never die. When your spirit cries, it's where your freedom lies. Never let your freedom go.
But I always thought it was a very awkward fit. I really didn't. TNT without Harnell and Diesel Doll too. I mean,
Right.
it's really not TNT. And I kind of felt like Mills almost like dumbed himself down by being in that, because he had to sing the Harnell songs, and everybody always wanted Harnell to sing those songs, and then he had to sing these crappy new songs that Letecro wrote.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It never set well with me. I was very glad once he finally got out of that mess and they stopped calling it TNT and it was put to bed.
It's weird because I always thought, like, before, when he first got announced as the new singer, and I was like, to me, knowing his past and knowing his vocal style, I was like, wow, it's a perfect fit,
Well, vocally, yeah.
And
I mean, they're 2 guys that sing in
those
super high
high
registers.
pitched,
Yeah.
vocals, and I'm like, but it just, right from the start, those first 2 albums.
I mean, I think the material is what ruined it. I don't think, I think, but the problem with Mills is he has such an identifiable voice.
Yeah.
He's one of the few handful of guys that the moment he sings, you know it's him.
Yeah.
So to pass his vocals off in TNT was just, it just never sat well with me. And then the crappy material that he had to sing, it was just an awkward fit. And I've seen the live videos and DVDs, and to me it was always cringeworthy that he had to sing in that band. That just didn't fit. And I'd feel the same way if Harnell was singing in Shy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, the last album they did, the third album with him, was a farewell to arms in most of the world, but I think it was called Engine.
I was going to say it was called
somewhere in other parts of the world. That was probably the best thing they did with him. They got a little bit back more to the traditional TNT sound. I thought it had some good songs on it. I remember at the time.
It did. It was definitely the best of the 3. There's no
for
question
sure.
about it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was particularly great, but
No.
it was. I don't know whether it was done on purpose because the other two didn't do that
so
well.
much.
I don't know. I didn't follow it all that closely when he was
By that point. I mean, if they had come out of the gate with maybe that
with a
album
really
as the
strong
first album,
or
then
something.
it would have been
yeah,
like, okay,
but
we're building on something.
I pretty much was just waiting for it to end.
Yeah, at that point it was. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's just what it was. So we talked about, Shy, obviously. We've talked about TNT. We talked about Siam. But Tony Mills is a guy that has done a plethora, right, of stuff. I mean, other bands, other projects, things he sang, a handful of songs on things.
He's always been very in
albums.
demand. He's been able to reinvent himself. He was so talented that he could sing different styles. He sang metal, he sang AOR, he sang melodic hard rock.
Yeah.
He's put out some
Eclectic stuff,
that
different
even though it
things
wasn't
that
that
you wouldn't
good, his
expect.
vocals still sounded good.
Kind of like a poor man's Jeff Scott Soto in a way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. In terms of exposing his voice out there,
And not as known name,
Yeah.
as maybe most people, at least in America, might know Jeff Scott Soto a little more. But a guy.
Well,
like
the
that, he
funny
did
thing
so
with
much.
Soto is, to this day, he's just recognized for being on those Malmsteen albums, which both albums, if you put them together, there may have been one album's worth of vocals.
Songs where he sang.
So as much as I love Soto, he's built a 40-year career almost just being on two albums with Malmsteen. Everything after that was all under the radar stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, as good as like Talisman was,
Right,
it was a
Talisman,
European,
and CUNY, and
band.
Axel Rudy Pell. I mean, he was an Axel Rudy Pell when Axel Rudy Pell wasn't didn't have 1,000 albums and everybody knew who he was.
Yeah.
And he was in CUNY, and it's just the Talisman, which is definitely the best unknown band.
Yeah,
in probably the last 30 years of hard rock.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things. Is there some things that stand out to you? We talked about before we went on. I know for me, I was personally kind of like focusing on certain aspects or certain albums that beyond the Shy, beyond TNT, the big stuff. There was an album or a band by name of Serpentine that Tony Mills sang with. He did 2 albums with them, right?
That would
I
easily
think
be probably my
Welsh
favorite
band
stuff.
or from Wales, maybe, or something.
Yes.
Young kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, the young guys, yeah. I mean, they look like
not kids,
in
but
their mid to later 20s.
Yeah.
I guess.
Love for the future. Never again will I turn back. I got new love in my sights. Into the white, out of the black. There is nothing more now. Nothing I know stands in my way. I got the whole world in my hands. Gonna keep it that way. You have saved me somehow. Beyond all hope and reason. Love for the future. Love for the future. What do you say? No one ever looks away. What do you say? It's so hard to explain away. Maybe your love could one day take me somewhere. Oh, I've never been there. The touch of heaven from out of nowhere. Maybe your love.
But that was easily, I would say, my favorite stuff outside of Siam material would be Serpentine, especially the first one.
Yeah,
Second one's real
Serpentine,
good, too.
It's real keyboardy,
Oh,
very
again,
AOR-y, very.
I mean, I think he was pretty much a hired voice on this.
yeah, I would say so. I mean, the band was probably a bunch of guys that were together and needed a singer or something, and
Right.
they called on him and hired him up, But yeah, no, those are two really good, really strong albums. Great,
Really
playing,
good. His
great
vocals
songs.
are so good. Whatever Heartache is just a phenomenal song. Lonely Nights. Whatever Heartache, A Touch of Heaven. Let Love Rain Down. It's just, and he does a cover on Break My Heart. Great record.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Now those albums came out around 2010, 2011,
Yeah.
and right around that same time, he did something else that was really strong. The State of Rock.
That's another great record. Yeah,
which is basically the guys from Frontline, right? With Tony Mills singing.
That's another terrific record. I almost forgot that, so I shouldn't say this is the strong. The State of Rock I would put almost on the same level as the Serpentine records.
Yeah. Now, I remember a lot of people at that time when that came out. I remember a lot of people talking about, album of the year at that point.
Really good. Well, Robbie Boble was the main guy on this.
Yeah, guitar player from Frontline.
I think he wrote most of it.
Yeah.
He's a terrific songwriter.
I'm living like a man with no future. You only love me when it suits you. Forever building bridges in a high tide. Walking for miles when I could hit you right. You don't know, I don't know. However long grows so cold. Silent words tell me so. And I don't ever wanna lose you. I'm not the sort of guy to fool you. But we're hanging in the bottom.
Funny because Frontline, the debut album was State of Rock, right?
Right.
Unbelievably good album, by the way. One of my favorites,
that
one of my
Frontline
personal
stuff.
all-time favorites. That's
The
for
first
sure.
Frontline.
Oh, the
Great.
first Frontline is
Great.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very it was very Bonfire.
Oh, just
Vibe
Bonfire
with a different
little
different
Bon
style
Jovi
singer, but,
style,
Yes,
more
Bon Jovi
commercial,
meets Bonfire.
Americanized, you know.
yeah. That Frontline, the early all the Frontline stuff was good, but the early stuff was real good.
Yes.
real
yeah.
good.
Oh yeah. Great singer, the singer.
Yeah, that guy was a real good singer.
Steve
too.
Perry sounding, a little bit.
He did sound a lot like Steve Perry.
Now, German, not a German accent to be heard for the most part.
That's true. That's true.
We talk about we talked about that with a lot of some of the German singers have that either you have a really endearing accent or you have something that's just cringeworthy.
Well, that's always been for me like the difference between a lot of German bands.
Yeah.
The vocals. And some guys could some of the German guys do have an accent, and it's something cool about it. And some of them do, and it's not so cool.
Right. Yeah. No, we talked about that with like a Klaus Lessman from Bonfire.
Yes,
he's got
Lessman,
a good accent, a heavier accent, but
he had a heavier accent than actually a lot of other guys in
about
lesser bands.
Yeah.
Did. But Bonfire was a weird band because they just had something about them. If you listen to them, like you really tear it apart, it really wasn't great, but in it, the whole thing put together, there was something great about it.
No, they're a favorite of mine for sure. I mean, so
I liked them even better when they had Angel Schleifer on guitar.
Yeah. That was the a little earlier, mid period.
Yeah.
I guess you would call it, right? But yeah, so what other things from beyond what
one
we've
that I
talked
think I
about
was just
already?
telling you before, he sang on a long-standing older Italian band called Crying Steel, who got back together.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Metallic sound.
Some a little more metally.
Yeah, but
what year was that released?
it's not that old, really. 2018.
Oh, wow, that's pretty current. Yeah.
It's very good.
There's a reason in the rhyme and a crime in mind. And the shadows push your fear into overtime. Are you picking up the signs in between the lines? You swear there's nothing there, and a long time it inside.
very good. I don't even know how I stumbled across this, but
And that's just a self-titled album, no title.
this is called Stay Still. But it's an older band. They had stuff out in the 90s, and they just kind of got back together with some of the original members and hired him as the voice.
Yeah.
I don't know if he toured with them. I really don't know that or not. I couldn't speak to that. But
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. The material was good. And again, now he's singing more like, pretty much straight out metal. And
Yeah.
it was good.
What do you think? And I was telling you, and I listened to an interview with Tony Mills from 10 so years ago, just recently. And I when you think about Tony Mills and what he's done in his career, he's had the Shy. Earlier was a little more, like you said, that new wave of British heavy metal on the debut. Then they went to more of like almost like an AOR-y sort of, British.
Right.
But what do you think he was as far as, because he did some stuff like the Siam. He did stuff like you mentioned right now with this more metal, but he was probably like, maybe was he pigeonholed into like the AOR, more melodic because of his voice? Do you think he maybe enjoyed doing a little more of the metal and a little heavier, harder stuff like the Siam?
Yeah, well, some of the TNT stuff was challenging. Some of that stuff, I've seen it live. That was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
A real outrageous guitar player. That stuff live was pretty heavy. He had the chops to cut it. I don't know. I never really got that feel from him as to really what his own personal
Preference or
niche
style.
was.
Yeah. Well, you look at, because the reason I raised that question is because we were talking, just look at his solo albums. Now, he's released 6 solo albums, and you have everything from like late 80s hard rock AOR sounding stuff to like some more, like he had an album, Vital Designs was his 3rd solo album, 2008. And that's almost like, it could be like an offshoot of like Siam. Like it had a little bit of like an aggressive.
Yeah, an aggressive progressive
Yeah.
type of sound. The album cover had that look to it too.
Feel to it, yeah.
Shades and...
There's something you desperately need for your insatiable greed, like a pure fresh air to breathe. What a pain you gotta relieve. You need a vital design, a mighty fine partner in crime, a mock blue for evolution, technological solution. I'll give you a call on the latest satellite Wi-Fi, activated all denied. No problem at all. We got a direct link for air correction, a warranty for your protection. Your vital design, the sign of the times. Systematic decline.
I
Even the album
liked
after that was Over My Dead Body, a very weird sort of album, right? Like a
Yes.
very eclectic, some like eclectic songs
Yes.
and strange sort of stuff going on there.
That's another one that I remember listening to it at the time. I actually kind of liked it, but it
Really?
wasn't...
I never took to it for some
Yeah,
reason.
it's not something I'd go back to with any regularity. Yeah, he was... If you look at his whole career, he was all over the place. His vocals were always in demand. We're not even going to go over all the things that he sang one song on.
Right.
He sang backup vocals on
Oh my God,
probably
yeah.
easily 100 different albums.
Yeah.
There's a couple of real obscure bands, one or two of them I can't even think off the top of my head, that he sang a song on one of each of their albums. And I have a good part of their stuff. There was the album by an artist called Dale, Screaming for Silence.
Okay, I remember you telling me
Yeah,
about that. not
that's
too
that's
long
good
ago.
stuff. Again, a little on the progressive side, but his vocals on it were terrific. He sang on the whole thing.
Talk about mega obscure.
Yeah, really obscure.
D-A-L-E, Dale. That's
Dale.
just the name of the.
That's just the name of it. And I guess somewhere along the line, I saw somewhere that advertised that he was the singer on it, and I took a chance with it. And it's actually good. I like that album.
Total indie release that.
Yeah.
No one really. What was that? A European thing that came out in
Yeah.
England or
Yeah, I think it's actually an independent.
independent?
Yeah. Lasse Dale is the guitar player. There was which we were talking about, the China Blue, which that guy kind of, I mean, that was, I believe, on Frontiers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that was actually like an Eric Ragno project. That was, I think he had that band, or at least the idea of something like that many years ago.
I remember reading that somewhere.
And he pulled in a bunch of guys. I mean, he had the guitar player but he had the Ronnie Smith from Xenon played on that. Right. You know, Tony Mills, of course, sang on the whole album. But that was actually a pretty decent album.
Yeah, it is good.
Sleep at night. A dream you have that you can't touch. A love you desire so much. You're looking for a reason, or something to believe in. But can't you find somebody to love? You wake up running, looking for an answer.
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah,
too.
Eric writes just Phil Vincent writes on this album too.
Oh, okay, yeah. Phil Vincent. Yeah, I forgot that too. Yeah. But that's something he did. That was when did that come out? That was around 2008 or so. So that was, it was in the middle of, he was doing everything. I mean, he had TNT going on, he had this, he had
he was a voice
albums,
for hire.
He had,
he
had everything going on.
I think at this point he kind of relegated himself to that's who he was going to be. You know, he got remarried, seemed to be very happy, relocated. I think his days of touring and going on the road were kind of behind him in terms of his new lifestyle and his new wife. There was also this Northern Light project that I was telling you about. That's actually a really good record.
And that he sings a few songs on that, or
and there's Frederick Berg sings on this. Fergie appears on this.
Oh wow!
Fredrickson, Kimo Bloom is on it. Rob Marati is on it.
Oh wow!
Michael Erlinson is on it. Yeah, it's a really good, strong. Tortali plays guitar on it. It's a very good record.
Interesting.
Kind of goes under the radar.
Yeah.
They're all really good melodic hard rock. We were talking about the Streets of Change.
Yeah, well, let's touch on that. The last two Tony Mills solo albums were Streets of Change, or Streets of Chance, was it? Streets of Chance?
Streets of Chance.
Streets of Chance and Beyond the Law. What were your feelings? I know we talked about this. The Streets of Chance it's an awesome album.
Terrific.
It's great songs.
The songs are brilliant, and the vocals. I don't know exactly when Tony's medical problems, his health was at the forefront. It might have been even around this time, but you'd never know it by listening to him, because one of his great vocal performances, vocals are tremendous on this album.
Yeah, it really is.
The songs all the way through are great. Like the first song, Scars, When the Lights Go Down. The second song, Legacy, Battleground. It's a terrific. I would put this way up at the top of the things he's done outside of Shy. Very high at the top.
Something had to wait.
And big props for, I love that album cover, by the way.
I do too.
I think it's a great album
I do too.
cover.
It's really, really cool piece.
Yeah.
Put out on Battle Guard Productions.
And then the last album, right before he kind of knew this. He was saying this right in the press and stuff when he was finishing.
Well, he was
up
definitely sick when he
the
was
last
recording.
album,
He
which
knew he
was Beyond the Law.
Yeah.
He was saying, this will be my last recorded, project and last recorded album and everything. So he knew that. That was a little bit. I don't know if I got. I mean, I love the album prior to that, Streets of Chance, but Beyond the Law, I didn't really get into as much. It's. I wouldn't say it's a concept album, but the songs are kind of based about like on the Prohibition era.
Yes.
And like the 20s and 30s, which is so strange because here's this British singer, right, doing this album with songs all kind of based around like the 20s and 30s Prohibition era in America. And I don't know, it's kind of like it's got some good songs.
It does. When the first time I listened to it, I was men's on it.
That's what I
think I was a little disappointed. It's good. I would put it somewhere in the middle of his solo stuff.
Yeah.
He's definitely done a few things I liked less.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put it at, I wouldn't put it with middle of the road.
So is there anything else that you want?
I'm getting tapped out.
Bring on him. I mean, I thought this was kind of a cool episode to do this because, like you said, when we talked about it in the beginning and when you had kind of brought up this idea, it was just kind of more of a free form thing, because we've done this over the years where we've gotten together at times and we've spent a few hours in an afternoon just talking about music and it's kind of a take on what we do there. So I thought this was kind of interesting to do an episode like this, and we're definitely going to do it again. I think just kind of be a little freeform and just.
Well, I think it's more enjoyable for us too because when a lot of our stuff is, we try to be very structured and very detailed.
Yeah. And
then you're always under the gun of forgetting something or spending too much time on something and not enough time on something else. Where doing something like this is easier for us and maybe for whoever decides they would like to listen to it. It's more like having a discussion than having like a class.
Right. Yeah.
Like a college lesson on Europe. Or
when we do all those discography discussions, it's like I spend days and I make these lists up and my notes and everything and the albums and the release years and the players on it and the producers.
It's more like hanging out in a record store and talking about bands like stuff that we used to do years ago. Spend the whole afternoon talking about different albums. And it's what makes this music that we love so much fun because there's so much of it. And I've always kind of liked the idea that it flies under the radar. It's tough for the artists a lot, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that I don't like to see people become successful, but there is something cool about all these great artists that are just virtual unknowns in terms of the great scope of things.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's still to this day kind of an underground type of music, which it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was our episode talking about the British vocalist Tony Mills. We unfortunately lost him in 2019, but I'll tell you, there's no shortage of work. If you're not familiar with him or you're only familiar with certain aspects of his career, there's so much out there to look into. Wikipedia is your friend, or go on Discogs or something and just type in his name and see all the stuff he's done and he sang on and check it out. There's a lot of good stuff beyond the main bands like Shy and TNT and everything else that he's done. I mean, just there's so much stuff to
if I had to pick two things for anybody that really was not, I would say Shy XS and Sunset and Vine. Those two, because I think they're the two best Shy albums, and that was his signature band.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where I would start and take it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We definitely want to know, because this is something new that we tried today, and we said, let's see, hit us up on our Facebook page or something. Let us know.
Any singers we could, tear apart their careers and discographies. And,
exactly. Yeah.
I don't think there's any band that we or artist that we couldn't do.
So that was our latest episode, and we'll be back soon with a brand new episode. And like I said, we hope you enjoyed this one. So check us out on YouTube. So follow us along, subscribe there. Follow us on our Facebook page, and we got all our links there. You'll see when we post this. And yeah, check us out on any of your streaming platforms. You listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music, Google Podcasts, all that stuff. And yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll be back with a new episode soon.